All right, hey everyone, Micah here, real quick. Just I appreciate you being on this video, but hey, I'm just talking about real quickly, a little bit of stuff with eBay, right? And this is just a weight scale, right? Obviously, it's good to have if you're an eBay, reseller especially, or seller in general. You're gonna want to have some way to weigh your items, right? But that's just one item, and I'll tell you real quickly in a minute. One of my biggest recent epiphanies with eBay, one of the biggest. See if I can get tilted just right. But yeah, one of the most recent eBay epiphanies that I had with shipping, right? It's not like it's nobody's ever thought of it, right? Certainly, it's not like but it might be just a reminder for those of you who out there are like shipping stuff regularly, maybe irregular items and different kinds of items, and a lot of times you're looking for packaging. Maybe you buy boxes, right? A lot of different facets to consider with eBay if you want to really like optimize it to the best, right? So if you're an eBay user, you might be kind of casual, but especially for more casual, semi-casual users that don't necessarily have like professional shipping stuff already set up. Maybe you're selling some regular items that you found or have acquired through thrift or arbitrage or whatever. But and I think for a lot of us, at first it looks like a little ambiguous. What service do I use, right? But there's basically free and paid shipping options, right? And I recommend at the beginning, really especially, is using the paid shipping option, right? Now until you understand maybe when and where you might want to apply free shipping, right? Well, free shipping probably certainly got some benefits. Right? If people see free shipping, they're more likely to take it, but not necessarily. To be honest, I really have virtually never done free shipping on my store, right? I've applied it a couple times. I really noticed it increased the sales that much, really, if at all, to be honest. Right, I'm not saying it doesn't for many users, many sellers, right? Maybe let me know if it does for you, and I don't claim to know anything, absolutely, right? I'm just giving you my perspective as a casual part-time kind of reseller. I don't necessarily resell per se, like as it's a business, but it's kind of, it does regularly sell stuff, and so whether there's some stuff I don't want anymore or some stuff I somehow otherwise acquire or find or somehow obtain, right? So the thing is, you can sell a lot of different kinds of things on eBay. Oftentimes when you're selling a few different types of inventory, right, shipping is always ambiguous a lot of times, right? So you're wondering, hey, what can I ship these different things in? I think for most eBay users, especially beginners, probably the safest way to ship is with eBay USPS ground delivery, right? And more parcel ground delivery and calculated shipping, especially until you understand what you're doing. But in order to do that calculated shipping, and even when you're doing free shipping, either way, the shipping has to be paid for, right? Especially when you're doing free shipping, you really want to know what generally the shipping cost is going to be for an item, right? And that may be ambiguous, but either way, like I said, if you're doing calculated shipping, the thing is to get the item to, first thing, in my opinion, let me know what you think if you're an eBay reseller. The first thing I think you want to do with an item is really identify that item, right? That means just like looking all over for all the labels, anything that's written on it that identifies it, right? And then maybe use, circle to search on your phone or Google Lens or something like that, maybe to help you identify an exact match whenever possible, right? Maybe use eBay's UPC thing when you go into the app and if you start listing an item, right, it's going to give you a little deal right here where you could just click, whoops, let's see if I can click right on it, and it'll let you look up the UPC if there's a barcode or something like that on the item that you're trying to sell, or the packaging of that item you're trying to sell. So it'll help you identify that exact item, and you can just make a listing from there, right? That's kind of optimal, right? But you do want to check all those listing, description elements. That's the most important thing, in my opinion, really, in terms of getting a good sale on eBay, is having accurate descriptions, right? Accurate title and descriptions with no errors. The more errors you have in your listing, the less likely it's going to get good searchability, right? But for me, the biggest shipping thing, let me know if this is helpful at all, because, one of the biggest things, though, for me about shipping is because when you're trying to package items, is you're trying to find different kinds of boxes, different sizes of boxes, and I'm sure you're aware that Amazon sends out lots of different types of boxes and packaging material with a lot of stuff that's sold through Amazon. eBay the same way, maybe a little bit different because you get maybe more variety of different types of sellers, right? But this right here is one of the biggest epiphanies for me right here. This brown wrapping paper, right? And we all seen it, right? It's good for filler, right? It's good for protecting glass items and fragile items, and certainly, filler, right? It's great, but it's also great just as wrapping paper to ship an item, right? Now, unless the item's real fragile, you might, use extra amount of it, right? You want to get a good price on it, so it's not like too expensive. You can get it for as little as, like, I don't know, 10 cents or less a square foot or a foot or something. I don't know the exact pricings of it. And a lot of times you can get this with stuff you might buy something that's delivered to your home, and it could have paper like this that you might want to save it because you can use it to ship. Now, this ain't the best example because it's ripped right here, just in this one little area, but otherwise the rest of the roll is good. But with a lot of types of items, right, especially with items, a lot of times you have an item that might be like, it fits into a box, but the box is still like too big for it in some way or another, right? And then if you add an inch or more to the eBay shipping when you're creating the label, it affects and triggers the shipping cost, right? So your shipping cost could go up if it's just 2 inches over, and maybe you don't need those 2 inches, but the box is too big, and you could cut the box in some ways, maybe in some cases, but maybe oftentimes with many items, right? Not every item, because some items are more fragile or flexible in different ways, but you could use this wrapping paper, right? Let me know if you use it at all for this style of like wrapping up your items, right? And just wrap it up. Maybe you need to wrap it multiple times. You don't want to like waste your paper, you know what I mean? Because you're paying for it, but it's not super expensive. And even though, yeah, your shipping might offset your shipping a little bit at the cost of this, maybe a little extra tape if you're using, more tape to wrap it or something like that. But the shipping cost usually could be up to a few dollars less if, you're just 1 or 2 inches or 3 inches under that you could have saved if you had a more exact match of a box, right, to your item. It depends how big the item is, right? So, like I said, I just had an item that I shipped that was just a little pedestal, and I had a box that was maybe 1 or 2 inches over it, and, I could have messed up the box and everything like that. But to be honest, this really worked perfect, just wrapping it like 3 or 4 times and just putting tape on it, right? Now, if you're concerned a little bit about anything being fragile or this tearing, which it probably won't unless they're really, messing up the box or packaging when they're moving it, which usually they do pretty good, I think. But you want to wrap it a few times, maybe put a little extra tape to secure it a little bit more. But you can wrap virtually anything in this. It's kind of like the Amazon bags that you can get when you purchase something from Amazon. A lot of items will come in like just a paper brown bag. A lot of times they're different sizes. You might have an item that's too small, but you have one of those bags, you're thinking, well, this is way too big for this, or vice versa, it's too small for the item that you're doing. But you could just simply, basically make the same thing out of one of these right here, right? So, like I said, 24 inch in this case, it's 24 inch. I don't know how many feet this roll was originally, to be honest, because I get a bit of it, like, every now and then for, like, free. It just comes with certain items. We'll have... Sometimes it'll be really crumpled up, right? And that's not necessarily what I'm talking about for packaging items. I'm talking about a clean roll like this. You could wrap the package pretty tight. Now, you might put some other protection on the package, or wrapping or packaging around it before wrapping it with this to protect it from maybe moisture or other types, plastic. You might put a plastic bag around, maybe a clothing item or something like that, and then you want to put something like this to wrap it, and essentially make a paper bag for it, essentially, or parcel, if you will, and use this. And maybe let me know if you try it. Maybe if this is a breakthrough for you in terms of just not like a huge breakthrough, but honestly, for a lot of items where you're thinking, hey, this is going to cost me a little extra shipping, I don't want to mess with this box, go for this little thing, save 70 cents. And maybe 70 cents might just mean you have to use a little paper, but maybe not using that much. You use just a little bit of paper, and it might be overall saving you a little bit of extra money with every transaction that you ship out, right? And just maybe in some cases just generally making it easier and quicker to just package an item without having to think about it. What am I going to put this in? Right? That can oftentimes take you an extra 5, 10, 20 minutes depending on your situation or how you're looking for packaging, especially if you don't have things organized, right? So this is Micah here. Let me know if you happen to drop by here. I appreciate you listening in. Maybe this is just giving you a couple of extra tips. But like I said, when you're starting to list your items on eBay, maybe you have some insights that you would like to add to this video. I think for a lot of beginners, one of the biggest things to learn is how to make a good accurate descriptive listing, and a high accuracy in description and a good amount of item specifics. So your item is, maximize the findability of items, right? And have definitely affordable the lowest cost, but respectable ways to ship, right? You know, package your stuff well. Now, this ain't for everything, right? This is just one thing that can be used for, like, you know, I was looking at things I sold, and I was thinking, oh, heck, you know, sometimes it was like spending like 5-10 minutes looking for something. I could have just wrapped it in some of this, and it would have been right out the door, right? Save me like an extra 5 or 10 minutes or whatever, right? Or save some money. All right, hey, Micah here. Just let me know if you happen to listen. Thanks for this. Thanks for your time here. And by the way, maybe a couple of other videos, and maybe you can encourage watching one of them if you see something there you like. And maybe we'll see you in the next video. All right, until next time.